Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Dallas Social Distancing Toastmasters meeting. My name is Mark Schroeder, and I'm going to be the meeting facilitator again. We have a full agenda, including multiple speeches tonight and evaluations, and we are pretty much ready to go. What I want to do is I want to show you, as usual, how to get to the agenda, should you be interested in following along. Best way to do that is to go to the Dallas Social Toastmasters site. Oops. That won't let me move my windows. That's the one I want right there. Go to the Dallas Social Toastmasters site, click on the members section. From the members section, you can click on club flyers and announcements down on the lower right-hand column. There you will find the agenda for 2020-0507. And that will get you to this copy of the PDF. And that describes all of our meeting tonight. I'm going to keep a copy of it up for me just to watch what's going on. If you are interested, please feel free to do the same and follow along with the agenda during our meeting. With that, I'm going to introduce let our invocation and pledge take it over, and that's going to be our invocation and pledge and Toastmasters, Mark Sims.
Thank you, Mark. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Thursday night, Dallas Social Toastmasters. The theme tonight is setbacks, and that's something I became familiar with, as we all have in our lives, but a couple of days ago, about a week ago, had a minor setback where I was giving a presentation in an unusual format since I needed to give a presentation to a board of directors of a bank. We, of course, could not meet in person. I was doing so over the phone, which felt funny, wasn't feeling great that day. And without the audience interaction, during the course of the discussion, I felt myself getting a little nervous, ill at ease, felt my voice trembling just a little, the breathing getting a little erratic. Frankly, some things I thought were way, way in the past. I think now it only lasted literally about a minute. As always is the case, it seemed like it lasted a long time, but looking at the slide deck that I was going over, it could not have been a long time. Everything managed to calm down, finished the presentation, went over the major points I needed to make. It was just uncomfortable. And it didn't help that some of my supervisors were calling in to the same meeting. Now, that's not a major setback compared to what a lot of people are going through today with severe illness or deaths in the family because of the pandemic, or people with incredible economic challenges because they've lost their job, or other circumstances. It's more like a bump in the road that simply needs to be overcome. And hey, looking forward to the next opportunity. But that said, it reminded me that some great men, great women in the nation's history, people that we revere in the history books, sometimes really, really were in a bad straits and had significant setbacks of their own to overcome. So I will go over a couple of examples of that during the evening. What I will do now is introduce our duty holders. And when I introduce you, please describe your role. Our first duty holder is our timer, Nicholas Elwood. You're on mute. Nicholas, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Again, and Toastmasters, any guests. As the timer, I'm going to be helping the speakers with time on each of their specific speeches. Green card that I've indicated, spelling it out, maybe backwards for some of you. That's going to show that you've qualified on time. Yellow card, like I've indicated here, is going to show your target time. And then the red, which I've indicated here, is going to be the max time. And you'll have 30 seconds to finish your speech. For the 2 prepared speeches tonight for 5 to 7 minutes, I'm going to show this card at 5 minutes, green. There you go. Show the yellow card at 6 minutes. There you go. And the red card at 7 minutes, which will mean you have 30 seconds to finish up. For the evaluators, each evaluator is going to have 2 to 3 minutes. The green card will be shown at 2 minutes. The yellow card at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and the red card at 3 minutes, where you're going to have 30 seconds to finish. For table topics, each speaker has between roughly 1 to 2 minutes to speak. I'm going to show the green card at 1 minute, which you qualify, the yellow card at 1 minute 30 seconds, which will be the target time, and then 2 minutes, I will show the red card, which will be the max time. You'll have 30 seconds, to finish. If you go over time or more than 30 seconds, you're going to be disqualified and not eligible for any awards. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Nicholas. Our posture bell duty holder is Lee King. Lee, please describe your role.
Yes, so this evening, my job will be to evaluate everybody's posture, which most people I know will be seated. So, well, basically be looking for mostly will be the facial gestures and things like that. Although, if someone were to stand, I will look at the full body. I don't have anything specifically to ring, but I will make notes throughout the meeting and then give those reports during the general evaluation portion of the meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Our odd counter tonight is Rob Giles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. As the odd counter, I will be listening for crutch words, anything that is distracting to the speaker's purpose and goal, anything that will take the audience's attention away from what they're trying to achieve. So that's things like ahs, and then long pauses. Sometimes it's you knows, so's, words that we use as fillers. So I'll keep track of those. Normally, I would be using a clicker during non-prepared speeches. I won't be doing that this evening. However, I will be still taking notes, and I will give a report at the end of the meeting when called upon by the general evaluator. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Our vote counter tonight is Mark Schroeder.
Thank you, Mark. As vote counter tonight, my duty is going to be to count the votes for our various contests tonight. Those, of course, will be our prepared speaker, our table topics speakers, and our evaluators. Since we should have 2 speakers and 2 evaluators, we will have a vote for that. And of course, we'll also have a vote at the end for the best of the big 3, which will be our Toastmaster, our table topics master, there we go, and our general evaluator. The way you will be placing your votes is by using the chat on your screen. If you are on a PC or a Mac, it's probably on your lower right-hand corner, but there's a chat button that you can use to activate it, probably at the bottom of your screen. Set it to send to Mark Schroeder. We do have 2 Marks, so make sure you set it to Mark Schroeder, not just Mark, and that way it will come to me. I will tally the votes, and if there happens to be a tie, I will cast the tie-breaking vote. I will report a list of the people who have won awards at the end of the meeting. Mark.
Thank you. And our grammarian tonight is John Vessels.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I am the grammarian tonight. My job as a grammarian is to listen to the content of your speeches, looking for good uses of the English language or bad uses of the English language, interesting phrasing, things like that. I will do a report and present that at the end of the meeting. Also, I will present the word of the day, and the word of the day today is permeate. Permeate means to spread throughout. The aroma of the soup permeated the whole household. So you will need to use that when you are doing the table topics performance, and any other time you can fit that in, go for it. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. And I should note, in accordance with our theme, another smaller setback I had a few days ago and at my work group was on a virtual meeting on Microsoft Teams. I deliberately unmuted myself, and just to be a jerk, I started tapping loudly on my table close to my speaker on my computer. I thought I was completely anonymous, and I was wanting to get my supervisor mad to the point where he would angrily tell everyone to mute themselves. And then I got a private chat email from one of the coworkers who figured out who it was, and he asked, "Mark, are you building shelves?" So I was chastened and actually did mute myself. And so if I'm ever confronted about that, I'll have to come up with a cover story. Man, I just forgot to mute. So it's not good to be deceptive. One example of a prominent person that you've heard of who went through a rough patch in his life is a man who in his midlife, in his 40s, had been a county judge, and he ran for re-election and he lost. And at that time in life, he probably needed to or did take stock of his life because he had had a few setbacks. He earlier in life had been a farmer and he hated it. He had been a businessman, had a men's clothing store. It went out of business. He had attended law school for a little while. He had dropped out. As noted, he temporarily was an undistinguished and losing politician. He had a good family, he had a nice wife, and he lived with her in his mother-in-law's house, and she didn't think much of her son-in-law. So this is someone who does not sound like they're going very many places, but this person did manage a couple of years later to get reelected to public office. A few years after, became elected to the United States Senate. And then in 1944, Harry Truman became vice president, and then a few months later, president of the United States upon the death of Franklin Roosevelt. Now, that was not the end of his struggles. For a few years in office, he was so unpopular for many reasons that the old adage, "to err is human," was changed to "err is Truman." And when he left office, he had an extremely low popularity rating. And now with the hindsight of history, Harry Truman is revered by, I believe, both parties in America. So again, a very telling example of someone who at middle age arguably was washed up, overcome numerous setbacks, and went on to have an imprint on our nation's history. With that, I'd like to lead into our prepared speeches. Our first speaker tonight is Dawn Levy, and her evaluator is John Vessels. So John, please tell us about Dawn's speech.
Hey, everybody. Dawn is speaking tonight, and the title of her speech is "How Might COVID-19 Change Education?" Her speech is 5 to 7 minutes, and I don't have any specific guidelines, but she's going to work on content, organization, and length. So, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. So please help me welcome Dawn Levy. How might COVID-19 change education? How might COVID-19 change education? Dawn Levy.
And as a reminder to our speaker, please make sure that you have your timer, Nicholas Elwood, visible at all times.
All right, good evening, everybody. As Mark said, the title of my speech is "How Might COVID-19 Change Education?" So schools have been closed for going on 2 months now. It is estimated that about 50 million US children are not actually in school at a time mid-May when they should be in school. So what in the world is going to happen? I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of months reading about what is happening in education since schools closed. Right now, there are 47 states that have closed school or stop school in the buildings through at least the end of this school year. And though some students are in school, some simply just are not in school at all. And what is school? Well, school looks different. It looks different between states. It looks different in different cities, and even in one city, what school looks like might change from one building or one school to the next. I won't go into a long list of why there is such variability between schools, but you can just think about the different resources that are available, whether it's time, technology, and just human resources available. I mean, what is needed to pull together a whole new way of teaching and learning that has never, ever been done before? It really should go without saying that American schools were absolutely not prepared to go to online learning, because why would they be? And were teachers ready to pivot to do all of their teaching without students actually in the same classroom? Of course not. Do all children have access to computers at home? Absolutely not. Do all students have parents at home who can even help them with their schoolwork? No. The already wide equity gap is only getting wider, and we as a nation are going to face enormous challenges in education going forward. Tonight, I'm going to share with you some of the main concerns coming out of the pandemic crisis in the education space. Now, it's hard to boil down to just a few, but I'd like to share with you my thoughts on three main concerns and things that really run through my head every day. The three things are: what exactly are students missing by not being in school? And what are students possibly facing at home because they're not in school? And how in the world is school going to resume? So first, I'd like to just give you a few seconds to think about you when you were 8 or 10 or 12 or 18, and you're rolling along. It's the second semester of school. You're enjoying things, getting a little weary, but you know, spring break has just happened. You're good. And then bam, school's out. No school. You're at home night and day with the same people for 2 months. What would you think? What are you thinking? So here's what I'm getting at. What exactly are students missing by not being in school? You know, they're missing their friends. They're even missing their teachers that they grumbled about. They're definitely missing the routine. The little ones are missing their little desks, their little pencil boxes. The older ones are missing all that they were thinking about, going to prom and graduation. But what are they really missing big picture? They're missing learning. Okay? They're missing the opportunity to being introduced to new concepts, to being able to practice and master what they were supposed to, what they anticipated learning, what they were expected to learn. Some of what I've been reading are predictions that without any steady, constant instruction, these kids are going to lose 50 to 70% of what they learned this year. They will no longer remember. What else are they missing not being in school? They're missing mealtime. They're missing meals. The first week that school was closed, DISD gave out over 320,000 meals. These kids are missing mental health services. They're missing the school nurse. So what are they missing? They're missing a ton. School is a primary lifeline for millions and millions of kids. My second question, what are students possibly facing at home because they're not in school? This is somewhat actually terrifying to think about. The rise in domestic abuse and child abuse cases is horrifying. There's unbelievable stress that the kids, they can't get away from. The parents can't hide their fear. They can't shelter the kids. The financial stress of not being able to pay bills, gas, get food is enormous. And you can't, like I said, you can't hide that from kids. They know that if they're hungry, they know if the house is too hot. And kids are scared. Okay? They're being exposed to all that's going on at home and all the stressful situations. I can't even think about if I had to actually teach my own kids when they were little at home, stuck in the house with them night and day. But this leads me to the million-dollar question: how will school resume? At this point, there are projections, there are considerations. Dr. Inahosa, the superintendent of DISD, has announced there are three main possible scenarios: go back to school with major modifications, continue at-home learning, or a combination of both. He said within a couple of weeks we'll know a lot more, and he'll let us know what he's thinking. But I don't anticipate there'll be any answers anytime soon. But I do know I'm so thankful I don't have to make these decisions. So aside from the logistics to consider, how many kids can go to school at one time, how many kids can be on the school bus at one time, how frequently are they going to have to clean the school building, where are they going to pick up with these kids? There's going to need to be a ton of extensive testing to know what each kid coming into the classroom knows. They're going to have to cut back on summer break and winter break and spring break to make up for this time. Parents are going to have to be super proactive to make sure that their child is where they need to be. Some kids definitely are going to need to repeat this year. They don't remember even some of them, what they were supposed to know. One of my true fears is that even more teachers will get out of the profession than already are trying to. And that's another speech for another night altogether. So just to come back full circle, I hope that this speech gave you some food for thought, got your wheels spinning about how is this all going to play out. I'm going to list my 3 main concerns just real quick and give you a couple seconds to think about each, just so you can come up with your answers, hopefully retain that information. What exactly are students missing by not being in school? What are students possibly facing at home because they're not in school? And how in the world is school going to resume? Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jolene Monaco. She will be evaluated by Rob Giles. Rob, please introduce Jolene's speech.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Jolene's speech tonight is virtual organizing, DIY organizing, and productivity coaching. Jolene's going to be doing a speech for project number 2 of Pathways Level 1. So it's going to be her first speech from project number 2. And her speech is specifically geared toward her business. It's something that she's working on for a YouTube video for her business. And her time, Mr. Timer, if you could do this is special time, I'm putting in here for you, 3.5 minutes to 5.5 minutes. 3.5 minutes to 5.5 minutes. Again, with 30 seconds on either side. And her objectives, as far as the project is concerned for Toastmasters, purpose of the project is for her to present a speech on any topic. As I said, this is for YouTube, for her business. She's going to receive feedback today from me and from hopefully from everybody who has some comments. They can send it to her via chat privately, or they can send it to her via email or WhatsApp afterwards. The purpose of the speech is to present the speech, receive the feedback from the evaluator, and then hopefully implement that feedback appropriately for her next speech. Again, for the timer, 3.5 minutes to 5.5 minutes. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. And Jolene, I assume DIY stands for do it yourself?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So please help me welcome Jolene Monaco, virtual organizing, do-it-yourself organizing and productivity coaching, virtual organizing, do-it-yourself organizing and productivity coaching by Jolene Monaco.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Hi, everyone. I'm Jolene Monaco with Design to be Organized, and I'm here to tell you about virtual organizing. Have you ever wanted to get organized but didn't know what was something stopping you? Virtual organizing is when the professional organizer, in this case me, connects with you electronically via FaceTime, Zoom, Skype to coach you to your goals. The benefits of virtual organizing are it's budget friendly. It's much less expensive to do virtual organizing as opposed to having me in your home. Having me in your home, usually we work 4 to 8 hours. Virtual organizing, our sessions are usually an hour to an hour and a half tops. And you're going to be doing the majority of the labor because you're going to be doing work in between of our sessions. It's also for its privacy. A lot of times clients are scared to come forward because they're embarrassed about their clutter. And I understand that, but it's just like when you go to a doctor, you have to talk about your symptoms. And so there is going to be a degree that you're going to have to discuss with me about where you have obstacles to overcome. And I understand that, but with virtual organizing, you get to have more control over that as opposed to me wandering through your whole house. The other thing, it's schedule flexible. Because we're working in short amounts of time, over Skype or FaceTime or however you choose, we are going to be able to do all of your homework on your own schedule. So that could be at night, on the weekends, whatever you choose to do it. So it's a very DIY, very flexible plan. Is it right for you? I don't know. I mean, it's not necessarily right for everyone. The best candidates for virtual organizing are individuals that are the DIY type. People that are motivated, but they just have become overwhelmed with too many ideas and need some direction. You don't have a professional organizer in your area is another thing. If this sounds like you so far, let's talk about what your expectations are. We've all seen those beautiful photos on social media, and I really love them too. Not necessarily always very practical, but they are very beautiful to look at. And if you want that, that's great, but let's just talk about what it might take to get you there. So before we start working together, I'm going to send you a questionnaire, and that's going to go into detail about your space, your goals, and your budget. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to send me some pictures and some videos, and if you have any Pinterest ideas, so I can get an idea of what types of styles you like, so I can make product recommendations for you. Now we're ready for our first session. Then we're going to go over, it's going to be a shared process of creating a plan for you to move forward. After our session, I'm going to give you homework, and then you're going to go through the process just like it would be if I was in your home. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go through a system of sorting by what you're going to keep, what you're going to toss, and what you're going to donate or possibly sell. The other thing, you're going to start categorizing your belongings. So you don't end up with your batteries in your sock drawer anymore, and you don't keep on buying those batteries over and over again. The last thing you're going to do is you're going to take a look at what containers or storage items that you might need to buy in order to keep your contents more organized. And this is where your budget comes in. And those really pretty photos that you see on social media. So I always try to reuse what clients have to try and be as conscious about their budget as possible. So I'll use shoe boxes or whatever I can find around the house. If you want more uniformity, you could do something like going to the dollar store and buying containers that match, and they're more budget friendly. And if you really want to go to, something that really looks more like social media, my favorite place, of course, is the Container Store. If you enjoyed what you liked so far, please hit the like button below and subscribe to my channel for more updates about organizing. You can visit my site and say hello and by hitting the link there as well. See you next time.
Thank you, Jolene. At this time, I would like to ask for a timer's report from Nicholas.
Hi, Mark. Yes, both speakers qualified on time.
Terrific. In that case, please send your vote for the best speaker, either Don Levy or Jolene Monaco, and please send that on private chat to Mark Schroeder. Going back to prominent people who had to overcome setbacks, some years ago in American life, there was another middle-aged man, age 39. He had previously been a soldier, but he had resigned that, and there were some whispers that part of the reason was because he was an alcoholic. He returned to his home place, and he tried a few different jobs. Nothing really worked out. He tried being a farmer, didn't work out. He tried being a bill collector, didn't work out. He ended up getting a job from someone who wouldn't fire him, and that was his father working in a retail store. So at 39, this person did not seem to have great prospects, but unfortunately, the United States went to war with itself, the Civil War. And this man, who was a good soldier, he became promoted to a prominent level. He was a controversial soldier because he was so direct and so brutal in his strategies. but he was successful enough that Abraham Lincoln publicly defended him against critics, saying that he absolutely needed this man. And so midlife failure came to a level of success. He later became president, and everything went wrong. He trusted some subordinates who were corrupt, and so his name, Ulysses S. Grant, was consistent or thought of in the same vein as corruption for many years, even though he personally was not at fault or not corruptible. And he later actually tried to run for a third term. After his 2 terms were up, he took a term off, tried to run again to get nominated. He failed. And then he got deathly ill. He had throat cancer. He managed to complete his memoirs just before he died in order to support his family. They turned out to be among the more highly praised presidential memoirs. And his presidential reputation, I've read, has actually improved some in recent years. So again, an example of someone who at middle age had significant setbacks, pretty well washed up, and went on to occupy a unique spot in American history. So again, something for us to keep in mind when we think over our probably lesser troubles or lesser setbacks, how we can benefit from those that went before us. At this time, I'd like to lead into our table topics session, and that will be led by Dagan Newland.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I just want to remind before we get started that during table topics is 1 to 2 minutes. Remember, you must hit 1 minute. Then you have up to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So you have to stay within that time frame to qualify. And also, you must use the word of the day, which is permeate, to also qualify. Also, remember, if I call upon you to speak, make sure you keep Nicholas up in your screen so you can watch the time. And also, you may keep a multi-view on so you can see the word of the day, which is what John is now holding up to remind us. So I try to keep my questions close to theme. Now I try to ask my questions to some of the lesser speakers, but I did have to choose one person who had a little bit more speaking, and I'm actually going to choose that person first, which is Mark Sims. So Mark Sims, how do you handle setbacks?
I overthink them. I replay them in my mind. I am angry about them because I don't want setbacks. I may let those kind of things permeate my mental thinking. And what I eventually and grudgingly get around to is something a little more constructive, thinking, how can I improve this in the future? And I would like to say that leads me to success. But I found out as I get older and older, I've learned about myself that I'm somewhat prone to repeat some of the prior mistakes that I made in life. So fortunately, I don't have a lot of incredibly severe setbacks, and I've been fortunate by and large in my personal circumstances in life. But on a personal or professional level, when I have some setback, I probably would not hold myself up as a model example on how to consistently overcome them. Sometimes I simply survive them. Mr. Table Topics Master.
All right, thank you, Mark Sims. My next question is going to go to Nicholas. And Nicholas, I will be your timer for you. So Nicholas, your question is, tell us about a setback you've had and how do you deal with it?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Masters. For a setback that I've had many in the past. I've had to deal with them in different ways, absolutely. I know that dealing with setbacks can really create distress with you and create issues with your attitude. But I had a setback somewhat recently. When I left my previous mentor at my company, we weren't getting along on the best of terms. I think in terms of business, more on the personal side, it was a lot better. But due to differences in thinking of business near the end of our tenure, I could tell that there was somewhat of animosity going on. I believe that I was permeating a somewhat angry or dissatisfied attitude when I was there. The way I got over it was just, hey, working 10 times harder than I was before, either by job searching, earning more certificates, finding new niches in something that I really like to do. And I eventually get back and joined in commercial real estate. So it was a minor setback, I think, for a major comeback. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
All right, thank you, Nicholas. My next question is going to go to Lee King. So Lee, when you think about the setbacks you've had in your life, do you learn from what happened and try to avoid them in the future? Or you just let them slide, let them go and just let them slide by?
I think I definitely learn from everything in life. I think that the worst thing that anyone could do is to stop learning and make the same mistakes. After all, if you're continuously going up against failure and you're not successful, your outlook on life, your attitude towards other people did tend to deteriorate. And that overall demeanor definitely can permeate as you attempt new ventures in life. So definitely after every setback, I always do an evaluation of what went well, what didn't go so well, and how would I do things differently in the future. And I've found that I really, looking back on my life, I really haven't had that many setbacks, mainly because I learned from things that would have been a major setback. I never carried those problems or those challenges forward into other ventures of my life, because I really took that time to learn from my mistakes or the past. So in summary, I feel like I definitely have learned through my setbacks. Have I had setbacks? Yes. But I don't feel like I've ever had a major setback, because I've always been evaluating and changing myself as needed. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Lee. All right, my next question, I'm going to go to Mark Schroeder. So depending on the setbacks or setbacks, it could cause a certain amount of stress sometimes, depending on the aspect of the setbacks. So how do you deal with the stress part of it in general, or if you want to talk about some good, give some good ideas on handle stress? Mark.
Good ideas of how to handle stress when you have a setback. Well, it's certainly going to be a very individual response, I'm sure, for people. One of the ones that I find is that stress for me, if I feel it at all, it often ends up being, in effect, a physical thing, something that permeates my body. And as a result, I have to come up with something that is going to get rid of that stress. And one of the best things that I have found for it is actually exercise. I do remember some periods when I was under incredible stress, and those were some of the times that I was probably the best, fastest, and longest runner, for instance, of my life at the time. And it was because it was a way of getting rid of the stress. And I even used to joke when I would get toward the end of the run or the end of a particular exercise that I would feel so tired that this was as upset as I could be about it. It had basically taken all of the energy out of me to be upset. So for me, a lot of it involves that. There are other things that I do. I certainly do massage on a regular basis when it's something that can be dealt with and improved by massage. I also do a certain amount of, I wouldn't call it meditation, but I do a private time and thinking amongst myself, introspection, if you will. That helps some as well. But primarily for me, the stress, it does take a physical toll on me. So the first and foremost one is to get rid of the stress by some sort of physical exercise or exertion that, I don't want to say it takes the fight out of me, but it uses all of the pent up energy in another form or fashion. One of the toughest ones was when I actually had a physical injury and was unable to do that, because then I didn't have that as a venue for accomplishing it. So that would be my answer with regard to stress.
All right, thank you, Mark. I'm going to conclude my portion of the table topic session. So now I'd like to ask did everybody qualify on time?
Hi, Dagan. Yes, everyone qualified on time, including myself.
All right. John, did everybody use the word of the day?
Yes, everyone used the word of the day.
All right, thank you. So now please take a time to vote for the best table topic speaker. And please remember to send your vote to Mark Schroeder. Also remember that we have 2 different Marks speaking. So please use the last names, Mark Sims or Mark Schroeder, if you're voting for one of them. So, and also we had Nicholas and Lee King. So please vote for your best table topic speaker. And also, if you have any comments for any of our table topic speakers, you can send them a chat directly to them as well. So I will turn it back over to Mark Sims, or the general evaluator.
Thank you. And as Toastmaster, I have no further comments, so I'll turn it over to our general evaluator, Lee King.
Good evening, everybody. This is the evaluation portion of the meeting, where we will evaluate the meeting as a whole, along with providing formative feedback for our speakers and hearing from our duty holders for this evening. To start with, I will begin with our speech evaluators, starting with Rob, who will be evaluating Dawn. So Rob, can you please give us your evaluation?
Yeah, this is John Vessels. I'm evaluating Dawn.
Oops, I'm sorry.
So,
John.
so anyway, Dawn gave us a speech tonight that's very current events that all we talk about anymore is COVID-19. But she presented a very good, I don't know, I want to say byline, I've lost the word, overview of COVID-19 and how it affects education and our students today. I want to say that Dawn started with a very good, strong opening explaining what the situation was, how prepared we were for the situation. It was just kind of dropped in everybody's laps, and it was an immediate response that had to be made forward by teachers and by students and by parents and everybody else. So you had a good opening explaining your premise and what you want to discuss tonight. You made 3 really good points tonight that covered those on, what exactly the students are missing, what the students are facing at home, being at home all the time, and how school resumes. Those were your 3 points, and I think you explained good material in all 3 of those points. You explained how the parents, the teachers weren't prepared, what the kids were missing out, to the socialization. I mean, I'm working from home all the time, and I actually miss my coworkers, even though some days we don't even get to talk to each other much. I still kind of miss that socialization with them, and being locked up alone, or of course with kids, they have 1 or 2 parents, and their parents may not be working either, so everybody's locked up together. And I know that can be very stressful for them. I have a friend, and she's at home, and she's got 2 kids, and the pre-K is giving them more homework than the adult class is. Go figure. The other thing is what, sorry, what else, they're missing out in food and everything, and how are we going to get back to school? That's going to be the real topic, is how are they going to get back into school, get fed, have their socialization, have their health care, things like that. I mean, I know we're working on trying to get the kids fed that are missing out. But all in all, it was a great speech, very well organized. You presented 3 good points, had good material for these 3 points. And then at the very end, you wrapped it all up with a good synopsis, giving us food for thought, letting us think about how we would deal with these situations. Some of us, I don't know if any of us have kids anymore that are at school age, but I never did, so hey. Anyway, but all in all, very well organized speech. You made your time. You did a good job. Did a great job tonight. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Right. Next, let's hear our evaluation from Rob, who will be evaluating Jolene.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow members, and especially Jolene. Jolene, tonight I'm going to use the countdown method in evaluating your speech this evening, which is going to be a few things that I thought, 3 things that I thought you did well, a couple of things that I thought you might think about working on and possibly including in your next presentation, possibly this in your YouTube, and then one final thing that I really thought was good or was interesting. So let me get to the good things. First, your introduction. I thought your introduction was very good. It set the tone for your YouTube video. You talked about ways that the positive of virtual versus in-person, at-home organization. So I thought your introduction was good. And I thought that another thing was that I thought that you were very comfortable in your appearance. You smiled a lot during the whole thing, and you used phrases that were very casual, and I think it gave a comforting feel. That's the way I felt. So I thought you did a great job in creating a comfortable setting for your viewer. Also, I thought that you gave great information, very knowledgeable. You came across as very knowledgeable on a subject, and you should be, and that's what you're doing. So that's a good part. A couple of thought you
Rob,
might
this
think
is
about.
facilitator. It looks like we lost you for a second.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Now we
And
can.
now, yeah, go on.
Proceed.
Rob
Awesome
froze
again.
again.
That process. Am I lost again?
No, you're good.
Okay. So a couple of things that I thought you could work on were maybe possibly moving yourself away from the screen a little bit. And I'm not saying giving your like a head to toe view, but maybe from waist up, it might give you even a little bit more of a casual setting for you to let your viewers feel like, you know, you're right there, maybe even perhaps in their home with them at that time. So maybe something for you to think about with that. And then on top of that, another thing is if you're in that kind of setting a little bit further back, you said wandering through the house, maybe use a hand gesture during that. And then finally, one thing that I really thought was interesting, one, that it's YouTube, it's for your business, and I can't wait to be able to see that posted on YouTube and see what you did. So thank you very much. It was a great speech, some good things, a couple of things to work on, and I look forward to the video. Thank you, Jolene. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
All right. Thank you, Rob, for your evaluation. At this time, could I have a timers report? Did both of our evaluators qualify on time?
Yes, both qualified on time. I gave Rob a little extra time because of the cutout in the video, so both did.
Okay. All right, please vote for the better of the two evaluators between John and Rob. At this time, I'll go ahead and call for duty holders report. We'll start with Rob. Rob, will you please give your report?
I'm your counter for the evening, and just kind of going through, overall, I thought we had a pretty good meeting as far as ahs and ums, but here's a few that I want to go down the list. Dawn, I only caught one during your speech, so I thought you did a great job with that. You did have a few repeat starts, and what do I mean by that? If you say there is, things like that at the beginning of a sentence, so repeat starts, and that is something that other people had done as well. Dagan, when you came on as table topics master, you had three uhs. One of those might have been an but three uhs, and then you also had a couple of repeat starts. You didn't have any uhs or ums, but you had a. Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but Mark Sims, you had transitions where you used and through the transitions a lot. So maybe try to reduce the ands as your transition from sentence to sentence. Mark Schroeder, you had one although it was very, very subtle when you were doing your table topics. You also had a repeat start. Lee, you had a couple of pauses during your table topics that I thought were you searching. I just wanted to note that. John, during your evaluation, you had one and a couple of uhs. Everybody else, great job, and keep it up. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
All right. Let's go ahead and hear from our grammarian, John.
All right. Everybody did okay with grammarian tonight. The only word I really noted that I liked was grudgingly by Mark Sims. And everybody did a good job. Nothing bad, nothing awful. And so that's all I got to say. Mr. G.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, as far as posture, I didn't really see anything that was particularly distracting or particularly good. I felt like everybody made good use of posture with what we had. I'll now go into the general evaluation of the speech. Hold on 1 second. Oh. As far as a meeting as a whole this evening, very well organized. We had 2 speakers, 2 evaluators, which is always good. The meeting pretty much started on time. If we started a few minutes late, I didn't really catch it that much. We did have a few issues with the Zoom this evening. I'm not exactly sure how we would fix that in the future or how we would make changes. So other than that, I thought the meeting went really well. one thing that I would like to note is that when we're timing, especially when it's virtual, it's very important to hold up the green, the yellow, and the red card for the duration of the time rather than just flash it up on the screen, because depending on the screen that the speaker is using or a number of things, the speaker may not ever see the sign. So for example, when I was speaking, I have my screen on multiple screens because I'm trying to make sure that I use the word of the day as well as meet time. So it's very easy to not see the timing card. So make sure that if your timer, you're holding up the timing card until that duration of the time. If you are a timer and Rob is speaking, you might get some extra arm exercise because you'll probably be holding that red card for a little while. Okay. But really, other than that, that was my only critique for this evening. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and just call for a vote counters report. I'm sorry, not a vote counters report. Call for a vote for the best of the big three, which would be myself as general evaluator, Mark Sims as your Toastmaster, and Agan as your general evaluator. So please take a moment to vote for the better as the best of the big three, and send that mark to Mark Schroeder. We'll now go ahead and go on into our business portion of the meeting. Not much to report. We pretty much have, we voted last week to stay virtual through the month of May. So Mark Schroeder will be organizing everything with the restaurant as far as letting them know that we won't be back for at least for now. And we will reevaluate everything as the time goes on. And I think we pretty much decided that on June the 28th meeting, we will do a couple of things. We will vote for our next slate of officers, as well as how much into June we want to continue with virtual. That meaning if we decide to go, I'm sorry, with May 28th, not June 28th, May 28th, we'll hold officer elections, as well as determining how much of June we would want to remain virtual. If for all of it, some of it, we'll just kind of determine at that time. With that said, we also are in officer election season, so please email me and let me know if you are interested in holding an officer position starting this next year. We will need to find a new president because I've served 2 consecutive 6-month terms. Other than that, a lot of other officers can stay in their position if they like. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add at this time? Okay. Well, with that, let's go ahead and hear from our vote counter, Mark Schroeder.
Thank you, Lee. All right, so we've got 4 different votes tonight because we had contested races in all of our categories. I will go ahead and start with the best speaker tonight. Best speaker tonight goes to Don Levy. Congratulations. Table topics tonight will go to Nicholas Elwood. Congratulations. Best evaluator, our best evaluator tonight is going to be Rob Giles. That's Rob. And finally, for best of the big three tonight will go to Mark Sims.
All right.
All right, that concludes our awards.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. We'll stop the
What is
meeting
that?
in 3, 2,